All right, well, welcome everybody to how to use the Energy Star Multifamily New Construction Program. Uh, if you support our mission and want to get free access to all of our online education courses or instant access, as well as discounts on trainings, green building certifications, and more, go to greenhomeinstitute.org and become a member today. And a huge thanks to our first sponsor, introducing the all-new Rheem Prestige, an energy-efficient, quiet, and all-electric hybrid heat pump water heater. The future of water heating is finally here. This comes in a 50, 65, and 80-gallon system, and up to 3.55 UEF, or nearly 350% energy-efficient water heating system with a 10-year tank and part warranty, as well, and rebates available from your local utility. This can be used either as a ducted system or a non-ducted system, just depending on your climate and your construction type versus new construction, renovation, multifamily, you name it. And it also comes with leak detection for your clients or your building managers to quickly determine what's going on with the system if there is a leak and get in there and stop it to cause any further damage. So go to rheem.com/hybrid savings today. And also thanks to our main sponsor, Shrinergy. Shrinergy has mobile solar generators that you can take on the go or use as emergency backup in your home. These generators charge within 2 to 24 hours, depending on how many panels you have and how bright it is, as well as 48 hours in wall plugs, and then 4 to 6 hours within a vehicle. And you can see here all the various recharge times you get, 100 charges on a smartphone, and again, this is without the solar, 16 hours of a 50-inch LED LCD TV, and an 18 cubic foot Energy Star certified refrigerator gets up to 33 hours. So it's a 1 or 2 kit. You can either get the 1 solar panel or you can get the 5 solar panels. And so just increase the speed of your charge time depending on which kit you want to get. And this also comes with a base camp light, user's guide, a pretty long cable, and then a really nice shoulder strap that you can carry it with. And it only weighs in at about 20 pounds, so it's pretty easy to move around. Shrinergy, with years of experience in renewable industry, has also developed a solar microgrid kit with lithium-ion based battery storage for the U.S., Caribbean, Central, and South American market, based on the highest quality photovoltaic panels and hybrid inverter technology available in the industry. Their kit provides rugged durability, long life, and reliable performance day in and day out in providing electricity. And that's 8 kW of solar panels from a Tier 1 manufacturer, 5.5 hybrid solar inverter, lithium-ion battery up to 7.4 kHW in capacity, high-efficiency AC-DC conversion, automatic transfer switch, built-in battery, solar, and whole house monitoring, and an optimized energy management system for self-consumption, demand charge, time of use, and backup as well. So check that system out. And if you're in Michigan with Shrinergy, you can get paid to go solar if you have more than 1 acre of land and you're in the territory of one of these electric utilities. So check them out at shrinergy.com. All right, well, welcome, and thanks for joining us for how to use the Energy Star Multifamily New Construction Program. This course is approved among many CEUs, but Lead AP Homes and Certified Passive House Consultant, as well as AIA, HSW, Health, Welfare, and Safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Today, I'll be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I am the Executive Director at the nonprofit, the Green Home Institute. And so with that, I'm excited. We have 2 speakers today, and I'm excited to welcome our first one, Rebecca Hudson. So Rebecca, please go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so thanks, Brett. I'm presenting today with Gayatri Vijay Kumar from Stephen Winter Associates, and so we will be passing the presentation back and forth a bit. As you may know, Energy Star has been working for the past few years to develop a single multifamily program rather than splitting them into certified homes and multifamily high rise. The program is now available, and we really want to make sure everybody knows how to use it. So the goal of this webinar, make sure I can move it, is to provide an overview of the multifamily new construction program. We'll start with the eligibility, important transition dates, and then give an overview of the 3 certification paths. We'll also identify some key changes from the current Certified Homes and Multifamily High Rise requirements and how to find related information on the website. We want to get to all of your questions, but if we don't have time for them all, please email us at EnergyStarHomes@energystar.gov, or if you think of something after the webinar has ended. So let's get right into eligibility. Before the launch of our new program, what did we have? We had a Certified Homes and Multifamily High Rise. And depending on the building height and maybe the percent of common area and maybe the system type, your multifamily building pursued either Certified Homes or Multifamily High Rise. Definitely lots of multifamily buildings don't look like either of these, and we realized that this split didn't quite work for a lot of multifamily. Back in 2011, we just couldn't provide a single multifamily program, and so we built the Multifamily High Rise program and ended up with this decision tree, which created challenges given the very different structure of the 2 programs, even though the intent was the same. The difference between the exact program requirements created a lot of challenges for projects that had to go in between the different programs. Over the last 8 years, we've worked really hard to create that supporting infrastructure needed to launch a better multifamily program. And so with that, we really wanted to have a delineation between single family and multifamily so that all of multifamily would be under one program for all building heights, and that would include requirements for the common areas. And so that left us with this kind of conceptual tree where we would have a split between single family and multifamily. But then we had a decision to make. What do we mean by single family? And so we decided that was detached homes, 2-family dwellings, either side by side or 1-over-1s, and townhomes, which I'll get into in a moment. And then for what multifamily was, that meant most detached housing and townhomes as well. You notice they could be in either, but they have some special requirements if they're going to go through the multifamily new construction program. It could be mixed-use buildings as long as it's over 50% residential, but we didn't expand into dorms or assisted living. So this leaves us with a much cleaner decision tree, much shorter and much happier. There are a few footnotes, but essentially they're just saying that gut rehabs are able to participate if they can meet the program requirements. We recognize this can be really challenging, just like it's been challenging in the Certified Homes program. It also has some definitions for the residential, common space, and occupiable space, and it goes over the townhome rules, which I will show right now. So townhomes can use the checklist in the multifamily new construction program so that you would have projects all under the same checklist, but they must use the ERI path and the Certified Homes reference design. So we'll get into what that means a little bit later, but just note that they won't be using the new multifamily new construction reference design. They would still have to use the Certified Homes one, but they can decide whether to participate in Certified Homes or multifamily new construction. The definition is from the IRC, so a unit of 3 or more attached units, but they extend from the roof all the way to the foundation as a single unit. If you are more visual, these are the types of multifamily buildings eligible, from skyrise condos, attached townhomes, garden-style walk-ups, or apartments with double-loaded corridors. Now on to some key implementation timelines. Before we get into our own spec development, as I mentioned, we've been working to grow the infrastructure for multifamily. And one of the key reasons we couldn't just expand certified homes into high rises was the limitations on the HERS rating, modeling, and the scope of raters. ANSI 301 is the standard that serves as the basis of all HERS ratings and is referenced in the 2018 IACC in the ERI section, but it's currently limited to 3 stories. But ANSI 301 2019 has been updated to remove the height restriction, and ResNet is likely to adopt this new standard, which means we think it will be available in July, and then it would be required in software in January. So that meant for our own specification development, we've been working for a few years to develop the specification, get stakeholder feedback, and we launched in January. Our website also launched, and at the end of the presentation, I'll go through a few slides on where to find information on our website. But what this means is that any multifamily building, regardless of permit date, that complies with all of the multifamily new construction requirements can get certified in this new program. So any project that you have, you can switch to this program if you want to, and you can start reporting in April, so next week, when Q1 reporting opens. You could go through the new construction program. But as I mentioned on the previous slide, the HERS has not yet adopted the new standard, and so until that adoption happens, the ERI path is limited, and so it's limited to 5 stories and below. We think that that restriction will end in July. For the first couple years, projects can choose between the Certified Homes, Multifamily High Rise, or Multifamily New Construction, but starting with permit dates for January 2021, multifamily new construction will be required for multifamily buildings. So they won't be able to do certified homes unless they're the single-family duplexes or townhomes, and no projects will be able to start multifamily high-rise. Okay. Next, I want to go over the framework of the requirements. And so some folks, if you've listened to Energy Star webinars before, might be familiar with the key components of our program. We have a performance target to make sure we get our energy savings. We have mandatory features that you can't trade off for. And then we have testing and inspections before you can get the Energy Star label. What we've done in the multifamily new construction program is we really wanted to align a lot of these so that the mandatory requirements would not be different based on how many stories you have, etc. So we did a lot of streamlining to put it all under one program, but we also added some flexibility to the performance target. And so we have 3 options for how you meet the performance target, and we talk about these as our 3 paths. And Guthrie is going to get into what those mean a little bit later. But first, I want to take you through who are the people who are participating in this program. So a lot of these folks should look familiar if you've gone through the Certified Homes program. We have our builders, raters, and folks, HVAC designers. But you'll notice that we've added a few. These in red are different from Certified Homes, and they've been taken actually from Multifamily High Rise. And then the functional testing agent is actually a modification of the HVAC credential contractor. So let's get into these folks a little bit more in detail. First, we have our builders and developers. They're responsible for the water management system requirements, and on a project, either the builder or the developer must be a partner. Both can be, but you need to have at least one of them be a partner. And so they need to have completed an online partnership agreement. Through that process, they'll watch the online orientation video. Raters, they need to verify that all of the requirements have been met, which means they're going to complete the rater design and field checklists. And then they're also going to collect the additional documentation, including the HVAC design report, functional testing checklist, and if they're going through the ASHRAE path, they also will have a performance path calculator. And if they're going through the ASHRAE or prescriptive paths, they'll need to complete the Multifamily Workbook, which we'll get into a little bit towards the end of the presentation. They also need to be a certified rater, RFI, or equivalent, and they have to have gone through the rater training and completed an online partnership agreement. They need to have completed the training in order to sign up for the partnership agreement. And what is this training? Well, if you're already an Energy Star rater partner, then you just need to have the multifamily specific rater training. And it's a similar format to the Certified Homes training, and you get 18 resident credits for that. If you aren't a partner yet, then you need to complete both trainings. And that training actually this hyperlink, if you look at this later, will go to the courses available. So if you are already a rater, an Energy Star partner rater, then it's optional for the first year to get that new multifamily training. So you have a whole year before you need to get it if you already are a partner with the Certified Homes training. But by January, in order to certify for the multifamily program, you'll need to have that training completed. So if you're already a partner, you need to upload the new training certificate into Mesa. Or if you're new, you'll just upload it during your sign-up process. Next up, we have the functional testing agents, which, as I mentioned, are modified version from the credentialed contractor, and they complete the functional testing checklist. And so what they need to be is either a credentialed contractor, or we have additional options of commissioning credentials or the OEM representative. And unless they're a credentialed contractor, they need to watch an online orientation and be listed in our directory saying they have watched that orientation. The HVAC designer needs to complete the HVAC design report and give it to the rater, but they don't have any specific requirements in order to do that. ASHRAE modelers, these are only for the ASHRAE path. They need to create the ASHRAE 90.1 whole building model, and they need to complete the performance path calculator. And they need to have already signed up to watch our online orientation and be listed in our directory. We already have a few modelers in our directory as seen here, and so I'm sure more will be added on soon. We have our multifamily oversight organizations, and these guys are the ones who oversee the quality assurance. And so for our verification oversight organization, this is for the ERI path, and this is very similar to the homes process where you have a provider under resident. And then the multifamily review organizations cover the ASHRAE and prescriptive paths, and they provide oversight very similar to folks who are participating in the Multifamily High Rise program. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Guthrie to go into more details about the certification path.
There we go. Thanks, everybody. So as Rebecca said, I'm going to take you through the details of the certification path. And so as you saw earlier in the presentation, this is kind of the visual representation of the requirements in the multifamily new construction program. And so the certification path, the three versions we have here, are how you demonstrate compliance with that performance target. So we're going to go step by step through each one of them, starting with the ASHRAE path. And so the ASHRAE path is the path we use in our multifamily high-rise program. And so this is also used by LEED. It's basically where you create whole building energy models based on ASHRAE 90.1. And it's energy cost savings above a specific year of ASHRAE. And so to determine the year, it's based on the commercial code adopted by the state. And so if you are in a state where they have adopted the 2009 IECC, your performance target is 15% above ASHRAE 90.1 2007. If you are in California, this performance target is 10% above Title 24, whether it's 2016 or the upcoming 2019 standard. And so as Rebecca mentioned, we're trying to do something different in the multifamily new construction program. We're not trying to split multifamily between 3 and 4 stories or by system type. So all 3 certification paths are going to be available to all different types of multifamily. So in contrast to what we did in multifamily high rise, we're actually going to allow low rise multifamily to pursue the ASHRAE path, even though low rise are not really part of the scope of ASHRAE 90.1. And so we'll deviate a little bit from Appendix G, and we're going to allow our low rise multifamily to actually follow Appendix G and model their energy cost savings above ASHRAE 90.1. We'll make a slight modification. Multifamily high rise usually gets compared to a steel frame baseline if following Appendix G, and we just modify that to be a wood frame baseline if it's a low rise project. The other change that we made compared to what we did in multifamily high rise, we'd instilled a energy penalty associated with projects that wanted to provide space heating to drop plenums or garages for pipe freeze protection or for comfort of the dwelling units above. And so that was a penalty in the multifamily high rise. What we did is we removed that penalty from the multifamily new construction program, and instead we've added some mandatory requirements that will help reduce the energy use of those systems. So the next path is also a modeling path. This is the Energy Rating Index. That's what the ERI stands for. Just like ASHRAE was the modeling path for multifamily high rise, the ERI path has been the modeling pathway for certified homes. And so, as Rebecca mentioned, that Energy Star reference design. So in certified homes, there was the Energy Star reference design, and basically those are the specifications that got built into your energy rating software, and it would auto-calculate what the ERI associated with that reference design was, and that became your target. You entered the specs on your design, and you were trying to beat that target. And so when we developed the multifamily new construction program, we copied that, and then we tweaked it, and that became our multifamily reference design. And so when you see documents, you're going to see in multifamily new construction, we are in version 1 or maybe 1.1 of our program. This kind of aligns with when Certified Home says version 3 or version 3.1. The reference design, if you're looking at version 1 or version 3, is based on a level of stringency that we think is okay for maybe states that have adopted the 2009 IECC. But for other states that have kind of progressed beyond that, we need a slightly more stringent reference design, and that's where you see the 1.1, or in certified homes, you see 3.1. Then there's also states that have progressed even further. So states like Oregon and Washington and even California, we develop a regional 1.2 version for those states. And now we don't have all the energy rating softwares haven't all implemented the multifamily reference design yet, but you can contact your software provider and see when they will have it. We do expect that when they calculate the ERI target using the multifamily reference design, that's going to model a little bit more stringent than the certified homes reference design, meaning it's going to be a little bit lower. So maybe if it's a HERS index of 65 or 60 right now, you're going to see that score be a little bit lower. So maybe a little bit more challenging for your design to achieve. So now, Rebecca did mention this earlier, but I'll just repeat it. That multifamily reference design is going to be used for most of our multifamily projects, but not for townhomes. So a townhome is still going to use that same reference design that they've been using in certified homes. So they will not see a change in their energy rating index targets, even if they choose to go through the multifamily new construction program. The ERI path, again, trying to reiterate some of the stuff that Rebecca has said before. We are hopeful that in July, this will become an option for you guys to use. The point is that all buildings, all heights, should have access to all 3 paths. And so there is a temporary, between now being the end of March and hopefully by early July, temporarily you cannot use this path for units if they're in 6 stories and higher, but hopeful that by July 1st you will be able to. And so the difference between the ERI path and the ASHRAE path, the ASHRAE path is a whole building energy model, inclusive of dwelling units and common space. The ERI path is modeling just the dwelling unit. So it doesn't have energy being modeled in the common areas. So what we have to do instead there are mandatory prescriptive requirements in the common spaces to ensure that they are also energy efficient. So then we have the prescriptive path. The third certification path has no energy modeling. This is available for all projects except in California and even states that have adopted that 2018 IECC. So if you are doing certified homes on a regular basis, you've not seen a prescriptive path in some time. If you're familiar with multifamily high rise, this path may have been available early in the program, but then it stopped being available for states that have exceeded the 2009 ICC. So this multifamily new construction, the prescriptive path is a little bit more forward thinking. As states consider or have started to adopt the 2018 ICC, it's still going to be valid. Now, how does the prescriptive path work? Those reference designs that we've been mentioning, while it gets modeled in the ERI, there's no model here. So you actually have to build the reference design. All the energy components that are stipulated in that reference design are the things that you actually have to design and install in the dwelling units and in the common areas with some modifications. There are also some additional requirements beyond the ones listed in that reference design. There's things that do still affect the building's energy performance that we want to make sure we place some backups on. So one is, example is in-unit lighting power density. There's a maximum we have on that, as well as something like window to wall ratio. So for all that information related to 3 certification paths, where are you going to find that later on? This is the hyperlink to the website, and the documents you're going to want to look for will be first and foremost the national program requirements. It's always the best place to start. If you already know that you will be going through the ERI path, then you might want to look at the ERI target procedure, but really that's written with a software developer as the audience. It tells them how to implement the building of that reference design in their software. If you're doing the ASHRAE path, if you're going to be the ASHRAE modeler that Rebecca mentioned, you're going to want to look at our simulation guidelines and our performance calculator. They will be modified compared to the multifamily high rise. They aren't on the website yet, but they are coming soon. But just note that they will be slightly different if you're pretty well versed with the versions in multifamily high rise right now. Okay, so that's it for the 3 certification paths. So I'm going to dive into some of the mandatory features. Rebecca did mention some of these documents before. So these are PDF files, and these all contain our mandatory requirements. These are pass-fail requirements, and they are housed in these separate documents. So the first 2 are our rater design and field checklist. Then for our HVAC designer, there's mandatory requirements in the design report, and then the functional testing checklist, as well as the water management system requirements. And so the asterisk on the first 2 is that multifamily workbook that Rebecca mentioned. It's basically an Excel-based tool that creates a spreadsheet version of those 2 PDF checklists. We did hear loud and clear during the spec development that raters need an easier way to document this when you've got hundreds of units across multifamily projects. If you're using Rater Pro and Certified Homes, that's not something we're going to be using in multifamily new construction, but we do have a spreadsheet version of these checklists. Additionally, we worked with the raters to create a testing results spreadsheet to automatically populate your testing targets and then to document your test results, as well as common area test results. There are a couple of those that have to be tested. There's also some other spreadsheets that help you demonstrate compliance with some of these new requirements. And if you want to see a version of this, I'm going to give you some quick highlights of at least 2 of the tabs, but you can see online we have a beta version that shows a partially completed example. We are still working on the final tool that you'll be able to download and use for yourself. Not everyone has to use it. It is going to be used by our MROs. So if you're doing the ASHRAE path or the prescriptive path, you submit to an MRO, and this is one of those files. If you're used to doing multifamily high rise, you might be familiar with our T&V worksheets. Those are not a requirement in this program. They are not even used in this program. This basically replaces that Excel file. If you're doing the ERI path and you like what you're about to see, then it's optional. You can always use it. You could partially complete it. It's a tool that's available to you, but it's not necessarily going to be required for you. So here's a screenshot of one of those worksheets. And so the example I'm showing right now is the Rater Design Review Checklist. There's another tab that looks very similar to this, which is the Rater Field Checklist. Basically, we just copy and pasted all the checklist items from those documents into this Excel tab. One of the features that the raters commented on and said they would like to see is a way to filter out the requirements based on the certification path that you selected. So if you've already decided that you're doing the ASHRAE path, then can we filter out all the requirements that don't apply? And so you're going to see that there's a feature there. You just press this button and it's going to filter out those requirements. The other problem we have heard from raters is that in the PDF version of this, there's lots of footnotes. And then you had to go to the very last page of the PDF to connect the dots of which footnote goes with which requirement. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could actually see that footnote much closer to the actual requirement? So if you just press the show all footnotes, what's going to happen is it's going to show the actual text of the footnote. And then when you want to go ahead and hide that footnote, you can just press the button and it'll disappear again. So that's some fun functionality if you're going to use this Excel-based tool. The other tab I'll quickly show you before I move on is the dwelling unit test results spreadsheet. And so again, this is another screenshot of it. I'm going to zoom in on the table at the top. So these are yellow cells that you're going to enter data into. This is your unit type table. And so typically in your multifamily project, you might have, anywhere from 3 to 10 standard unit types that kind of repeat themselves throughout the building. So once you enter in some basic information about those standard unit types, we're going to populate this lower table, which is our testing target. So I'll zoom in on that one as well. And so just feeding from that first table, it's going to auto-populate all this information related to your testing targets. And you might be able to see over here, there will be columns where you can enter in your own data, and now it'll automatically tell you whether you passed or failed. So I don't have more time to go into greater detail on the other tabs, but again, you can check out the beta version that's online if you want to see them. I'm going to move on into our mandatory features, and I'm going to go kind of step by step through some of the program documents. I can't go through every single one, so if you saw off on the right-hand side, there's some handouts. There's a comparison document. So if your background is certified homes, there's a document that compares multifamily new construction to homes. And then if you're from high rise, there's a comparison document for you. And so I'll try and outline those as I go through each slide. We've already kind of talked about this first bullet here, compared to certified homes. The PDF is separated from the rater field checklist, and it's also available, like I showed you, in Excel. The first section is very similar to certified homes. So all of these documents look exactly like certified homes with some minor modifications. So if you're from the multifamily high-rise world, all this formatting is very, very different. You've been used to Excel files and not PDF checklists. So the format is new to you. That's a bit of a learning curve for multifamily high-rise. But if you're coming from certified homes, the format is very, very familiar. It's really just trying to understand the differences in the actual technical requirements. But for you guys, the partnership status, very simple section, didn't really change much. The fenestration and insulation section, still, those are sections 2 and 3. They are slightly different for you for certified homes. You're used to the dwelling units having requirements, and those are based on residential code. Now it's been expanded out to common spaces and also is now required, the basis is commercial code. You're going to see that there's some slight nuances there, and it also is affected by the path that you chose. The HVAC design report is also still going to be reviewed, still section 4. The rater still review certain items on that HVAC design report. We have given them slight changes based on changes we made to the design report, so you want to check those out. And then we added a section 5, which is completely optional. Based on the feedback during the spec development, we heard that people wanted assistance, reviewing construction sets. These construction sets for multifamily buildings can be rather large, and it's too late once you're in the field to try and make course corrections. So it's an optional thing, but we give you some items for you to review and checklist items so that you can actually just run through them and see that they are contained in the construction set before they go out to bid or permit. So the rater field checklist, the same before, it's separated, it's also in Excel. Here, unlike multifamily high-rise, we do have a requirement. It's the rater that is verifying the items in this checklist, and that rater, as Rebecca showed, right now is a certified rater, maybe a HERS rater or an RFI, but there are options for other credentials to come on the scene. But right now, it's basically a HERS rater or an RFI. There are some items that can be verified by a builder or a licensed professional, so you can look at the checklist to see which ones those are. There are some limitations on that. The thermal enclosure. Thermal enclosure is sections 1 through 4. That's the same as certified homes. Again, we copied and pasted these checklists to kind of retain that format for you guys. Something that's new, though, for both certified homes and high-rise is that we created some minimum insulation requirements for projected balconies, elevated podiums, heated plenums, and heated garages. Obviously, these are things that don't typically exist in single-family homes, but we knew these were areas where we needed to actually create requirements for multifamily. The fully aligned air barrier and reduced thermal bridging sections, those still remain with some slight modifications. And then we have a compartmentalization test requirement. So we took this one from multifamily high-rise. They've been using it for at least 8 years in the program, and even 5 or 6 years before that in the pilot. So this is a metric It's 0.3 CFM50 per square foot of enclosure area. That's not just floor area. Enclosure area is the entire 6 surfaces bounding the dwelling unit. This can be roughly equated to 6 air changes an hour. So it might not be that much of a heavy lift if you're already doing these kinds of tests to meet code, but this is a mandatory requirement that we adopted for multifamily high rise. And again, these aren't all the requirements. I'm just trying to show some highlights so that you're kind of aware of things that are kind of different from what you're used to. And so if we keep going in the rater field checklist, the next 6 sections are related to HVAC system and duct quality installation. There was always a bedroom pressure balancing requirement in multifamily high rise. There wasn't actually an explicit test. So we've added the test that came from homes, but we're only going to require it for bedrooms that have supply of 150 CFM or greater. There are some requirements for multifamily high rise that we did want to add, and so we've adopted those related to central exhaust duct leakage testing, HVAC equipment controls, hydronic distributions. These requirements are fairly similar to what's just required in code. So again, these might not feel like a heavy lift. For townhomes that choose to participate in multifamily new construction, the duct leakage outside, that DLTO, is still required, just like it was in certified homes. But for all other attached housing, you won't have to do duct leakage outside. It's only a total duct leakage test that you have to do for multifamily new construction. And you can also be exempt from it if all the ducts and air handler are in conditioned space and have less than a total of 10 feet of supply. So that's a total supply length. So if you have 2 duct runs that are each 4 feet, then you'd meet this. But if each duct run was 10 feet, then you would not meet this. And we've also adopted something similar to what Homes did. Homes offers more leakage allowance if you have a ducted system that has 3 or more ducted returns. So more ducted returns, you should get more allowance. We see in multifamily, a lot of multifamily have air handlers that have no ducted returns. The air handler sits in a closet with a louvered door. So we've gone the opposite direction. So if you don't have duct work on the return side, you can still test with the air handler, seal off your registers, but now you have a lower leakage allowance. So this is sort of different from our approach that we did in multifamily high rise, and a little bit different than what Certified Homes does. So then brand new sections to both homes and high rise. This is about domestic hot water. So some of these are from multifamily high rise. Some of them are brand new, like the heat traps and the R3 insulation, a little bit different. Common areas, we have some lighting requirements. So lighting power density maximums. We want the fixtures to be efficient. So either Energy Star or Tier 1 and Tier 2, which basically is from ResNet, roughly equivalent to compact fluorescent, LEDs. Those would all qualify as Tier 1 and 2. Automatic lighting controls. I do want to note that there is no foot candle requirement. We had a minimum foot candle requirement in the multifamily high-rise program, which we removed. And some of these change based on the path you chose. So again, you'll have to go to the rater field checklist, go down to this section and see which of these are applicable to your actual project. And this one is the whole building energy data acquisition strategy. And so what we had in multifamily high rise was a commitment from our developer that they would benchmark their buildings. And so what we want to do is give them an actual way to succeed. So we saw all the benchmarking ordinances across the country. They typically start at buildings above 50,000 square feet. And so we adopted language so that we could have a rater verify that at least one of these strategies was in place before certification. That way, the building owner will be better able to collect this data. So it could be something no cost like lease agreements where the tenant has to agree to release their utility data to the property owner or the manager. It could be something like an agreement with a local utility where they'll send them aggregated data on a monthly or annual basis. Or the builder or the developer could just buy an energy monitor or system so that they can track the data whenever they want. So we have an HVAC design report, as we mentioned before. So the HVAC designer completes this, and they do it at a building level, not a system level like they've been doing in certified homes. Again, high rise has not had to complete this document before, but the requirements they're fairly familiar with. You're designing common areas to ASHRAE 62.1, and then you're looking at the heating and cooling loads for the common area, and also the designer is going to document the equipment selected for those common areas. Room by room loads, now those are going to still be required if you're doing a townhome project through the multifamily new construction program, but all other attached housing can switch over to unit level or apartment level load calculations. I mentioned this a little bit before, but we've kind of changed the way you review dwelling unit load calc. So the designer is going to be given that information so they can get the values within the approved ranges, and we're hoping that this will better address internal gains and infiltration. I know raters have struggled with reviewing these when commercial load calc software has been used. We're hoping that this will help. Another item that raters have struggled with is that all the HVAC items that they're verifying are on their rater field checklist and not on the HVAC designer's report. And so we've actually copied and pasted all the HVAC items into that design report so that it's visible to the HVAC designer. They're not trying to figure out what they have to do from the rater field checklist. These are visible items of their report. We have an HVAC functional testing checklist. It's in quotes because in homes they called it commissioning, and we're recognizing that we're not doing full commissioning, we're just doing functional testing. And so the people that can complete our functional testing checklists are called our FP agents, and they can still be that credential contractor that participated in homes, but it's expanded out to also include a representative from the original equipment manufacturer or someone with a commissioning credential. And those specific credentials are listed on our website as well as on the top of the functional testing checklist. We've added a section 5 to cover all dwelling units and common systems, and we do allow the rater to verify these. And we've also added sections 6 through 9 to cover central systems, which have never been part of the home's commissioning checklist. So we've got central VRF heat pumps, central boilers, chillers, and their associated pumps. Here, the caveat is the installing contractor cannot verify these. So this will have to be a third party with some kind of credential or the equipment manufacturer representative. And then finally, the water management system requirements. Basically, this is not a checklist. It has a bunch of requirements on it, and it's very similar to certified homes. We've only modified one, which is that exemption for the capillary break. This is the responsibility of the builder and the developer, not a checklist to be marked off by the rater. It is applicable to the building as a whole, and this concept, everything about water management is fairly brand new for our multifamily high-rise projects. So that's it for the mandatory features in terms of highlights. Again, I suggest that you download the comparison documents if you want to see some more specific details. I'm going to hand things back off to Rebecca, and she's going to take us the rest of the way. And let me pause 1 second. Let me give her control back.
Okay, great. So back to verification and oversight. Great. As I mentioned earlier, there's 2 options. So we have different oversight organizations based on the path. So if you are choosing the ERI path, then the verification oversight will be very similar to homes, where ResNet is the VU, and you submit to your provider, and that's at the end of the project. If you are going through the ASHRAE or prescriptive path, then you'll be using an MRO, Multifamily Review Organization, that this hyperlink goes to the web page where they're listed, but I've also listed them on the slide. And this is very similar to the process for multifamily high-rise, and there is a design and as-built submittal process for that. So after that, you've gone through, you've met all the requirements, and you've submitted it, you get the Energy Star. Yay, congratulations. So we do have some labeling requirements. All units, just like in certified homes, will need to have a sticker on the breaker box or other appropriate location. But we also have some additional options. We have a plaque that you can purchase for your building. So shown an image of that plaque. And we have additional marketing resources around multifamily that you can email us for more information on. So if we put it all together, we went through a lot of information on those paths, so I'm going to split them out. So for the ERI path, to enter, the builder or developer and the rater need to be an Energy Star partner, and the functional testing agent needs to take the online training unless they're a credentialed contractor. Under design, you need to include all of the mandatory features in the design and complete the HVAC design report and rater design checklist. And you want to make sure that your modeling beats the ERI target. And then when you go to construction, you need to build to that design. The rater inspects and tests and completes the rater field checklist. You also need to get the HVAC functional testing checklist completed and update the energy model if there's been any updates, and you submit to your provider. And congratulations, you've earned the Energy Star. So I've bolded on here information that will change between the paths. So if we go to the ASHRAE path, when you enter the modeler, the ASHRAE modeler comes into play, and they need to take the online orientation. And then when you go under design, instead of doing an ERI model, you're going to have a 90.1 energy model that needs to meet that 15%. And you submit your design to the MRO. When you go to construction, again, you're updating that energy model. So this time it's the 90.1 model instead of the ERI model. And you submit your as-built to the MRO. And boom, congratulations, you've earned the Energy Star. And finally, for our prescriptive path, it's the same from homes because there's no modeler. And then on design, you don't need to have any model completed, but you do need to make sure those prescriptive requirements are included in the design, and you submit your design to the MRO. And then when you build, you have to make sure that you build to design. There's no waivers, so you got to make sure you've met all of those prescriptive requirements, and then you submit to the MRO your as-built, and congratulations, you've earned the Energy Star. So I've mentioned these submittals to the MRO, and I just want to go through again what documentation is included in those. And so at design, you have the rater design checklist, the HVAC design report, the multifamily workbook. Unless your MRO accepts a different format, we've created that template, as Guthrie mentioned, because MROs wanted a single template to work from. And then you need the construction documents, performance path calculator, and modeling files, but only if you're doing the ASHRAE path for those last two. And at as-built, it's very similar, except you're going to include the field checklist and the HVAC functional testing checklist this time around, and you also have photo documentation to submit. Okay. So how we've gone through our program, but how does this align with some of the programs that already reference Energy Star? And so essentially, Enterprise, NGBS, the 2015 NGBS, FEIS in 2018, they're all going to allow multifamily new construction in lieu of their current reference of certified homes and multifamily high rise. And in addition, we know that DOE and Indoor Air Plus are evaluating whether or not they can also move to higher stories or if they'll stay at their current eligibility. And finally, we have LEED for homes and their mid-rise. And so this EA prerequisite for the homes and multifamily low-rise, where it specifically calls out Energy Star for homes, you can use multifamily new construction instead. And similarly, with the multifamily mid-rise, they have option 1 for commissioning, where they specifically reference the Energy Star protocols, and instead of that, you're allowed to use multifamily new construction checklist. Okay. And as promised earlier, now we're going to pivot a little bit to where do we find all of this information on our website. And so this is energystar.gov/MFNC, which is at the end of the presentation. We'll have a link to it. But you'll notice that there's a new multifamily tab. So if you're familiar with looking here for the certified homes, that's under the single family tab. But when you click on the multifamily, this comes up, and you'll see here that there is a radio button where you can select which path you are using. Up on the right, we have our information about eligibility, and it includes our new decision tree and other information. And then right below that, we have all of those program documents that Guthrie went through, and that continues on. This is just scrolling down the screen, so it continues on with all of those checklist items. And you'll notice this had the ERI path selected. It also goes into which version of the program you're under based on the state you're in, and so you can look at that. And we also have additional documentation coming soon, and this is where you can find the beta version of the Multifamily Workbook. So up at the top again, you can select, if you move to ASHRAE instead of ERI and Prescriptive, you'll notice that the performance target is now included right below that instead of the map. And you'll see that it tells you what performance target you have and options for meeting that. And then we are actually updating the look of our partner resources page in general, and that should be coming in the next few weeks. It's almost ready to launch, and so look for that redesign coming soon. And with that, just want to make sure everybody knows where our website is. The program's now available. Again, a few more months, we think that the ERI path will open up, but we need to wait until ResNet adopts the new standard. And it's really important to note that projects that have a permit date after January 1st, 2021 will need to go through this program. Right now it's optional, and you can switch to it if you want to, but after January 1st, 2021, you'll need to move over. And rater training is available now, but not required until 2020 if you're already a rating Energy Star rater partner that has the homes requirements. Homes training already completed. And again, our email address for any additional questions, please reach out. With that, I think we'll take any questions and I'll pass it back to Brett.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, we have a lot of questions rolling in. Make sure to type those questions in. And before we get to those, real quick, how do I get my continuing ed? If you're watching this live today, take the survey that pops up at the end of the session. And also look for the follow-up email, which will also have the same survey, just take it once. For those of you listening to this recording in the future on demand, the recorded version, take the quiz with an 80% passing rate. And then from there, you'll have various instructions either on YouTube for GHI members or the USGBC website. So if you're trying to take this on our YouTube channel, have it pop up, go down and click on the YouTube link right there on the session. And then on the left there, head down to click Show More so you can expand the description. And then on the right there, you'll see a link on where to take that quiz and then the submission instructions for doing that. And as those questions are rolling in, I just want to say a big thanks to all of our members, our board of directors, our volunteers, and our top tier sponsor, Shrenergy, for on the go or in your house, solar connected battery systems for not if, but when the grid fails. Mitsubishi all-electric heat pumps, ducted and ductless for single-family, multifamily, large, mid-rise, and commercial, helping you get to net zero, going all-electric. And then T-Stud, structurally insulated framing systems that save energy and money behind the walls. So with that, let's get into some of the questions that we have coming up, and we have quite a bit, and I've got a few questions myself, so let's bring those up here. One question that someone mentioned is alterations, renovations, rehabs, you name it. How will this program work for those, if at all, and will it be different?
So I can take that. Essentially, any building that can meet all of our requirements can do so, but unless you're doing a really significant gut rehab, and even sometimes there are requirements that might be challenging for those, it can be very challenging to meet our requirements. So there are a few items where we have an option for rehab, but essentially, if you can meet all the requirements, great, go for it. But that can be challenging if you're not doing a very significant rehab of a project.
Do the insulation requirements also include air sealing?
Yes.
I can take that, Rebecca. Yes, there are separate sections for specific air sealing, and then there's a section specific to mandatory insulation minimums.
Now, I know this question has a different answer depending on which green building program you're using, or I suspect which pathway you're using. But can you just speak to a little bit about sampling and unit testing requirements as far as how many need to be tested and failures that may occur?
Sure, I'm going to take that one again, Rebecca. So the way Energy Star uses sampling is they just defer to the ResNet sampling protocols. And so if you're familiar with that, whatever you've been using for certified homes or multifamily high rise, it's basically the same. That protocol requires 7 units to be tested and passed, and then the remaining units are basically 1 out of 7 have to be tested, and if any of those units fail, then that incurs additional testing. But we really do defer to the specific protocols in ResNet standards, which are in their Mortgage Industry National HER standards. It's in Chapter 6.
And what is the cost for the certification? I suspect setting aside the raters and testing and all that, just like the sort of soft cost for the certification.
So there is no cost to actually certify, but you do have the cost of the rater's time and the MRO's oversight, depending on which path you're taking. But there's no cost to actually getting the label specifically.
And then a question from from the architect side, where do architects fit in the process?
So they need to work closely with the rater and the modeler in terms of design to make sure that all of the requirements are in the design. There isn't a specific role anymore in terms of in the multifamily high rise program. We had our submittals done by a licensed professional, which could be an architect or an engineer. And we've moved to having the rater do the submission, but that doesn't mean that those architects and engineers aren't on the team and making sure the requirements are being met. There is a design to earn designation that I didn't cover today, and that's something that architects could get partnership with. If anybody wants more information on that, they should send us an email so we can follow up.
So LEED before requires ASHRAE 90.1 2010 at I believe 6% or better, and then on the low rise side, it requires like roughly a HERS rating of 70, floating around depending on the home size adjustment. So with that being said, especially on the ASHRAE side, does then the state energy code take precedence in a LEED project, or do we still default down to the LEED energy requirements?
I'll give this one a shot, Rebecca. I mean, it's hard for us to speak to what LEED is going to do or say, so I think your best bet is actually to reach out to somebody at LEED. The reason that Energy Star, that was an Energy Star decision to change it based on the state code. I'm not sure that LEED is going to follow suit, but their requirement is less than, I think if it's 5 or 6% above the ASHRAE standard, if it's tied to 2010, what Energy Star has at least done is provide some flexibility. So there was a slide that Rebecca showed from our website. So there's a scale there. So we were trying to be flexible in our performance target. That way when other programs like LEED or whoever created something else, that we could kind of float with them. And so if you're tied to 2010, we have a performance target that probably will work for that as well. So, we're not trying to stay fixed to a certain baseline. We're trying to offer some flexibility so you guys can still work with other programs.
Yeah, if you actually go it's just 72. I don't know if you can go 2 slides back. So you can see that we have the table showing and the different options so that if you need to model under a certain code, you can see what your sort of percent target would be to meet for Energy Star.
Great. And, you know, obviously, like you said, you can't necessarily speak to this, but, you know, you had listed off various entities that have already made announcements on their adoption of this program. Has there been any news from the National Green Building Standard that you've heard?
Yeah, so they were included. So if you want to just go back maybe one, two, oh, it's a few slides. Oh, yeah. So they're included on this, yep, right there. So the 2015 NGBS, so, where it references
Yep.
homes and high rise, it also.
I didn't catch that part because it was tagged onto EGC, so thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Yeah. So do you know if ResNet or Ecotrope will be producing a report that can kind of show that you're on track with this?
I'll take a stab at that one. So the 3 energy rating software providers, so it's Ecotrope, RemRate, and Energy Gauge as of right now. We have worked with the 3 of them to provide them with that ERI target procedure so that they can build that Energy Star reference design. And so it's really up to them when they decide to implement it. But anybody who's interested in using it, they should reach out to that software developer that they work with and see when they will have it. And the reports will be built in. So basically, just like right now for certified homes, if you're using one of your energy rating index software that you choose, when you get done, it tells you that you complied with the Energy Star requirement or you meet that ERI target. It'll be the same for the multifamily new construction. They do also produce an Energy Star certificate and label. So we're providing them with that as well. So it's not a report per se, but it's a certificate and a label and a way to demonstrate that you've complied.
You mentioned something about post-construction utility tracking, but I did not hear you say the term Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Is that something that could be allowed in that utility tracking?
I wouldn't say that it's not allowed in the sense that it's a completely separate program. So the Energy Star is built between a residential branch and a commercial branch. We would highly recommend that all our new construction multifamily, once they achieve the new construction certification, you know, we're hoping that if we give them the strategy in place that, you know, after 12 months of occupancy, they would have the data and they could go to the other side, to the commercial branch, and pursue that Energy Star certification that's available for existing multifamily buildings, and that it would be through Portfolio Manager. So we certainly do recommend it. And as Rebecca stated, we do have that designed to earn the Energy Star credential or designation, and that is through Portfolio Manager. So at the end of your design, if you want to, you know for sure you're going to pursue that certification later on and you want to set it up in Portfolio Manager and you have the data, you can type it in and see if your score might clear 75 even at the design level. And you can get that design to earn the Energy Star at that point, and then you can come back 12 months after occupancy and put in your actual data and get that additional certification.
And the requirement in our program is just to make sure you have a way to get the data. You don't need to send that data to us or anything. There is no, you know, our specification now ends at the sort of end of construction and when the inspections are done. In multifamily high rise, we had a benchmarking commitment that wasn't necessarily achieving the ends we wanted it to, and so we've adjusted it to implementing a requirement where people have a strategy to get the data. But we are not trying to collect it, even though we encourage folks to use that strategy, as Guthrie mentioned, to go into Portfolio Manager and benchmark once they have it.
You had mentioned lower duct leakage requirements on systems that don't have returns, but how about completely ductless systems and that don't have any returns or supplies?
Right, so by definition, those would qualify as not having any ducted returns. And so they would not be subject. They would basically fall under that. There was no 10 feet of supply. Like they would say, I have less than 10 feet of supply because I've got zero supply. And so they'd qualify for that exemption that I showed on one of those slides.
Okay, so that would be not just lower leakage, but no leakage needed then, right?
Well, there's no ducts to test, so there would be nothing to test.
So keeping going on that conversation, we know a lot of the conventional HVAC systems, especially on the gas side for these types of really tight units, are typically oversized nowadays. What kind of allowances is this program giving in sizing overages?
Yes, so in our HVAC design report, you will see the sizing. It's a little bit complicated to go through without having a screenshot for it. We're trying to keep this a high-level overview, but if you were to download that HVAC design report and the person asking the question, you could either reach out to me or reach out to the inbox and I can walk you through it a little bit in greater detail. But there is a section on the heating and cooling equipment, and very similar to Certified Homes. You're going to see a cooling sizing limitation in item 4.18, and it's very similar. We basically copied and pasted it from Certified Homes, and same for the furnace. So there are some sizing limitations, and the same alternatives from Homes are available there.
And then, I know the ResNet raters have a good quality assurance program in place to ensure, the accuracy of these ratings, but I know that doesn't quite exist on the ASHRAE side. So how is that handled for projects that take ASHRAE or even Prescriptive?
Sure. If you want to go back to maybe the MRO slide, it's before all the website stuff. It was in Rebecca's section. But basically, you're right, because ResNet wasn't, we call them our VOOs, our Verification Oversight Organization, which is ResNet. And so they have their own quality assurance. And so to create the ASHRAE and the Prescriptive path, we needed that same oversight equivalent. And so that was developed, and that's what we call our Multifamily Review Organization. So where ResNet, we call them our VOO, we now have MROs. And so we do, on our website, have 3 Multifamily Review Organizations that have applied and been approved by EPA to review the ASHRAE and Prescriptive path projects. And the application's available online, so you can see what they had to do to apply and the requirements that we have on them. So they are providing that quality assurance, and basically they see every single design submittal. So it's quality assurance, but it's done slightly differently, right? You don't have to submit, if you were doing Certified Homes, it's not that you submit every single project at design level to your QAD at ResNet. Theirs is based on the 1%, 10% field and file QAs at the end. It's a little bit random based on unit. This is based on project. So every single design submittal, as of now, goes to the MRO. The MRO does have some flexibility in how often they need to see those design submittals once a submitter has demonstrated experience and quality of submittals. But then they also see them at the as-built again. So they see every project twice, once in the beginning until they get waived, and then at the end again. And then they also have a requirement where they do a certain percent of field inspection. So it's not quite as high as the 1% based on dwelling units that ResNet has, but it's, I think, 1% based on roughly projects. So you're not going to see an MRO QA on every single one of your projects, but the way that's handled is that they're seeing every single project, at least in terms of paperwork and photo documentation. And I think, Rebecca, I don't know if you want to add to that a little bit or not.
I know, I think you covered most of it, and if there's, I guess I'd see if anybody had more questions before going into any more. But essentially, we have created a slightly different but comparable oversight structure.
Well, great. We are at our time. I don't see any other questions. A huge thanks to EPA, Energy Star, and Stephen Winter Associates, Rebecca and Guthari. Thank you so much for your time and helping us walk through this. Where can people go to find out more information or contact someone if they want to learn more or get help?
right on the screen right now. So if you want to contact us, the email energystarhomes@energystar.gov is your best bet. And then if you want to look more on the website at the requirements, you can start at energystar.gov/MFNC.
Great. Well, thank you to you both. Thank you all for joining us. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your week. Goodbye.